Text, rewind. 7 decades of stories from Leonard Cheshire Disability. Leonard Cheshire Disability. Heritage Lottery Fund. Lottery funded. Text, no limit, 1964. A long brick building with gabled roof and dormer windows, overlooking an expanse of sloping green lawn. People are outside in the sunshine.
Lee Court is a Cheshire home. This film shows some of the gadgets which help the disabled people at Lee Court to lead active, purposeful lives. We hope it may help others with similar problems.
Behind a glass door, a man picks up a cloth with his mouth.
Albert Baker lives here, one of 39 disabled residents. He was born with a deformity and can't use his hands. Only 5 of the 39 residents have unimpaired hands, so there's an urgency in the drive to find new ways of doing things.
With his mouth, Albert threads the cloth through the door handle, lifts it up and opens the door.
Albert had a painting problem. He asked Charles Darby, a local engineer, for help. All the gadgets in this film are the outcome of cooperation between the residents and able-bodied people. The residents supply the need and often a good idea of how to fill it. Their friends provide know-how and the means of putting it into practice.
Charles Darby, with pipe in hand, enters the room where Albert is painting with a brush held in his mouth. Charles shows Albert some diagrams.
Charles gave a lot of thought to Albert's problem and finally wrote, "I think I have at last solved your problem. An apparatus which incorporates the support for your legs and a built-in easel. It will be made to your exact measurements." The easel and seat Charles designed and made is built of Dexion, a giant Meccano-like angle iron, invaluable for all sorts of structures.
A tall, metal-framed contraption in a workshop, consisting of a bench seat, table, and an easel attached to a pulley.
Albert pulls a loop of cord at waist level. This raises and lowers his canvas with practically no effort. The easel is drawn up by a cord that passes over a pulley and is attached to a counterweight.
Albert repeatedly raises and lowers the easel.
Extra weights are added to counterbalance heavier canvases.
Metal discs are added to the dangling counterweight.
Albert had a 4-year apprenticeship with the Mouth and Foot Painting Artists Association, during which they paid him enough for tuition and materials. He worked hard to improve his technique, sometimes as much as 10 hours a day. In July 1961, he was accepted as a member of the association and began to earn a salary. The following May he flew to the association's Congress in Vienna, and his salary went up. Full membership entitles him to a handsome income in return for first right to any of his paintings. He submits at least 20 a year, and the association's standard is stringent. There are at present only 49 mouth or foot painting artists in the world who have achieved full membership. Naturally, it's an enormous advantage to a disabled painter to belong to such an organization, which is run as a cooperative and has an international marketing network. It's doubtful if Albert would ever have made the grade without his special easel. Before he had it, for every 3 weeks he worked, he had to rest 2.
Albert paints at his easel.
I used this old typewriter for years. It was hard work, but I could manage it without help. I type with a stick, with a rubber on the typing end, and a dinky toy lorry wheel halfway up, to prevent it slipping through my fingers. The most I could do in a day was 1,500 words, but that was very tiring because there was not only the effort of hitting the keys, but leaning forward to press the carriage return lever and maneuvering the typewriter
The narrator awkwardly moves the manual typewriter sideways on the tray attached to her wheelchair, to remove the paper from the roller.
At Lee Court, anybody who can and will work is in great demand, and soon 1,500 words wasn't nearly enough.
She gathers up a new piece of paper with the stick clasped in her left hand.
I heard that reconditioned electric typewriters could be bought cheaply through the Polio Research Fund by any disabled person who can't manage an ordinary machine.
She rolls a new sheet of paper into the machine.
After waiting a few months, I was able to buy one. This was the beginning of a new set of problems. The electric typewriter was so massive and the carriage returns so violent that unless the table was locked to the chair and the typewriter fixed firmly to the table, the machine and I parted company with remarkable speed.
Charles Darby and a man with a moustache stand beside the narrator in her wheelchair, who now has a large, more modern typewriter on her tray. The man with the moustache writes notes as he chats to her.
Stan Coton, who's in partnership with Charles, took on the typewriter problems. He's still working on an idea for an automatic paper feed. Stan and Charles have a small factory 3 miles away. After he had made Albert's easel, Charles started a voluntary organization at Lee Court called Independence Unlimited. There was such an obvious need for a concerted effort to overcome the limits set by physical handicaps. He and a group of other men meet in the workshop here every Tuesday evening. Their numbers fluctuate, but we've had a garage owner, a farm worker, electricians, a schoolboy, carpenters, fitters, and so on. They service the wheelchairs, in itself quite a job, since 32 of the 39 residents are chairborne. Later in the film, we shall show some of the other gadgets they've made. The idea of forming a group could be copied anywhere. Every district has its disabled. Every district has able-bodied men of goodwill and skill and common sense.
Next, her wheelchair, with its wooden arms.
There are holes drilled in the chair arms with metal sleeves, and holes to correspond in the brackets Stan has fixed to the table. Smaller brackets on the tabletop will hold the typewriter immovable.
The tabletop is fitted onto the wheelchair arms.
Pegs hold the table brackets in position.
Metal pins are slotted through the brackets into holes in the wheelchair arms.
Metal reinforcements welded into the corners help the cantilever table to support the 46-pound machine.
The new typewriter is carefully positioned on the tabletop between small brackets.
Once I'd got used to using a different typewriter at a different height, my maximum in a day doubled to 3,000 words, and my fatigue halved. A problem nobody had foreseen was that the keys were too easy to the touch. Hitting 2 keys at once made them stick fast.
She interrupts her typing to prise apart the type hammers.
An extra plate over the keyboard made it impossible to hit more than 1 key at a time.
She continues typing, hitting the keys with her stick.
The carriage return button is often hit by mistake. I can't reach the carriage, so a hand lever operates a ratchet on the carriage and turns back the platen. Frank Spath was immobile for 25 years. His brother Jack, a commercial artist whose hobby is engineering, was sure that Frank could drive an electric chair. Frank has no grip in his hands, so he couldn't drive a single-engine type with a tiller control. But some chairs have engines on both wheels, like tanks, so that they'll turn to left or right by bringing in one engine or the other. Jack was determined to invent a control that Frank could manage with his very small range of movement.
Frank lies back in his wheelchair while Jack shows him leaflets about different wheelchairs. Next, a shiny black car drives through a large open gate and into a driveway.
Jack's home is at Fulmer, 40 miles away.
Jack gets out of the car.
A standard model electric chair was sent there, and he worked on his ideas for months.
He enters a workshop.
There are 8 electrical contacts to relay into a control box, giving movement forwards, backwards, and turning, if necessary, on the chair's own axis. It was a difficult problem with many complicating factors. At last he did find a solution.
Technical drawings of a control box.
The neat oval metal box had 8 brass contacts in the floor and an arm which Frank could press down and move sideways.
With his pipe in his mouth, Jack attaches parts to the control box with a screwdriver.
Green for forwards, red for reverse. A desk tray fitted with a reversing mirror completed the ensemble.
Frank reads a booklet in his new electric wheelchair with its table attachment.
The control box is on an arm, which folds out of the way when Frank isn't driving. A switch turns the engines on.
Frank unfolds the arm and pulls the control box towards himself, using a chain attachment. He moves off in the new wheelchair. It has comfortable-looking red upholstery and the large tray table attached in front to hold the items he needs. He drives himself out of the room and along a corridor.
Independence of movement is one of the things able-bodied people take for granted. It brings a new dimension, an indescribable freedom, to anyone who has been stationary for years.
Frank steers himself into his room.
Frank is the editor of the Cheshire Smile, the official publication of the Cheshire Foundation. It's a quarterly, printing 7,500 copies an issue.
He reads a booklet, using a stick to turn the pages before setting it down again.
He can push the door open coming in, but has to ring for help to get out.
Using his stick, he pulls a cable towards himself which has a button at the end. He presses the button, and shortly afterwards a young man in a white coat enters the room and leans over to talk to him. The door swings shut behind him. The young man opens the door again, but as soon as he lets go to assist Frank, it swings shut. He has to open it once more, before Frank is able to then reverse his wheelchair back out into the corridor.
A mechanical door opener is what Frank needed, which could be opened by bumping against a bar switch.
Frank drives his wheelchair up to a glass door that has 2 horizontal wooden bars attached to it. When the wheelchair touches the lower bar, the door automatically opens, and he is able to enter a large, bright room containing numerous tools and items of machinery. The door closes by itself.
Months ago, Clive Gunner, a garage owner, and one of the original members of Independence Unlimited, undertook to devise a motor-driven door opener. His prototype he put on the workshop door, where it was so invaluable that he had to leave it. He's still struggling to build an improved model for Frank's room, hampered by continual interruption from other jobs.
Clive sits at a desk, doing technical drawings. Next, a small, green, 3-wheeled car drives along a road and turns off into a petrol station.
Arthur's coming to fetch the motor for the door. A retired gramophone motor, actually.
Arthur parks near some old-fashioned petrol pumps and slides the door of his car open. He is approached by a man in a white coat who places a small box on the floor of the car. Back in the workshop, a smiling woman presses a button dangling from a cord.
The door opener is also worked by an ordinary switch inside the workshop. A cord runs from a huge cotton reel to the door, pulling the handle down, and then winding in the cord. A switch cuts the motor when the door is wide open, and the door is gently closed by a spring.
Next, a man in a motorized wheelchair holds a long stick with a curved end.
Brian opens doors with his stick. For years, the outer lift doors wouldn't stay open, and it would have cost £700 to install automatic ones. It cost £5, and the ingenuity of a member of Independence Unlimited to to rig up a transformer, solenoids, door blocks and microswitches into a competent alternative.
Brian reverses his wheelchair into the lift.
The microswitch on the door frame operates the wooden blocks, which rise, letting the doors fall shut.
He lifts the switch with his stick, and the outer doors close again. The lift doors move across in front of him, and the lift slowly ascends. Next, a woman in a motorized wheelchair approaches another door.
Tony's door-opening gadget saves her a lot of time waiting for other people to do it for her.
Tony uses a long stick with a bar at the end to turn the door handle and open the door. A long string dangles from the back of the door. It has a slim bar of wood at the end for gripping.
The door closing device is even simpler.
Once out of the room, Tony pulls the string towards her, which pulls the door shut again.
Telephoning is difficult to do independently. A first step is a receiver holding arm.
An extendable metal arm sticks out at right angles from a wall above an old-fashioned black telephone. It is then slightly unscrewed from the board, allowing it to drop slightly and to be swung left and right.
If there were no holder, Nipper would have to get someone to hold the receiver for him, limiting both the length of call and what he could say on it.
A man with deformed hands sits in his wheelchair near the telephone. With difficulty, he removes the receiver from its holder. He attaches it to the end of the extendable arm so that it now sits in a convenient position beside his head. He pushes the receiver to one side and then leans towards the telephone to dial a number.
This bell is for someone without grip or feeling in her hands. It's a hinged hardboard box with a micro switch inside.
A finger pushes the lid down to operate the bell.
A lever instead of an ordinary handle makes the tap 10 times easier to turn.
A hand pushes the metal lever to turn the tap on and off.
This tray is very light and easy for the owner to lift on and off. It's made of Dexian and plywood.
A small, wooden tray on a mechano-like metal frame is easily lifted off a wheelchair.
Another sort of tray fits.
A wooden tray, with a vertical metal bar attached to its base.
The tiller is removed from a monodrive electric chair and the table support substituted.
A man sits in a wheelchair while another person attaches the wooden tray in front of him, its vertical bar beneath slotted into a small holder between his legs. On the tray.
Without these footrests, the occupant of the chair was terribly uncomfortable.
Curved wooden attachments on the metal base of a wheelchair, with feet resting on them.
This is the last of our gadgets.
A man wears a red jumper and operates an old-fashioned portable tape recorder that sits on the tray of his wheelchair. He starts the machine by pushing on a thin stick that is threaded through a metal tube. The tube fits over a switch. The reels on the tape recorder begin to turn and he speaks into a microphone.
Brian got to the stage when he could no longer manage the controls of his tape recorder. So Charles made him a spanner. A length of dural tube with grooves at either end and a piece of bamboo to increase leverage.
The tube fits every switch.
Given the tools, there is no limit to what disabled people can do. The members of the film unit would like to thank the many people who have helped them make this film. The members are Laurie Moore, the cameraman.
Laurie, in his wheelchair, looks through the eyepiece of a cine camera.
Barbara Beasley, the secretary, who wrote and spoke the commentary.
Barbara looks up from her wheelchair where she is writing.
And Neville Thomas, the producer, and Brian Lyne, the sound technician, who together cut and edited the film.
Two middle-aged disabled men sit side by side, rotating spools of film on an editing machine. Text, a La Court Film Unit production. Text, Leonard, Cheshire Disability. Rewind. Supported by the National Lottery through the Heritage Lottery Fund.